start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Booker, will you give us the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, did everybody receive their minutes? Looks like we had about 2 sets. One was from the July 10th meeting and one was from the June 26th meeting. Did everybody get those okay, one way or another? Any corrections, additions, deletions? Okay. Missed a very good program that Stewart County put on for us last month. Very informative. Is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The minutes tonight will be taken by Leah since Bonetta is out of the country. So she's a good fill-in for us. Miss Betty, do you have a financial report for us
Okay,
today?
the last report, course, was at the April meeting. Our checking account, we had $2,782.39 in it. Our income was $20 in dues and $40 for books. And then I closed the memorial, that brick account, because we have ordered all the bricks. And the money that was in that, plus the memorials, was $3,979.40. And there was $1.33 in interest, made our income of $4,040.73. Our expenses were $603.49. $100 was for the academic banquet and donation. And we paid $25 mileage for the speaker. And Bonetta needed some stamps, so we bought 6 rolls of stamps for $300. And our mailing supplies were $15.99, and then our portion for the arts, to the Arts Council for the grant program was $162.50, and the balance in that account is $6,219.63. In our CD, we have $10,911.21.
Anybody have any questions or corrections on that they can think of? Okay, we'll move right along then to our old business. We can start first with our World War I update. Jackie or Donna, either one?
Huh? You don't want to do it? You gonna straighten me out? Well, we just wanted to remind everybody the World War I program, October the 7th, 2 o'clock out there at Hergoo Veterans Park. We appreciate all the information that we've got to this point from everybody and all the help and everything. We'll probably be asking for several people for some more help a little bit later on when we see exactly what the program's going to be. And if you have any information, just check with Jackie, myself, Deborah, and Melissa, and we'll be glad to scan it, copy it, take pictures of it, and just give it right back to you if you have any information on that. I've also got a list of the World War I veterans that either died in service or were killed in action. And what we're trying to do, we want to invite everybody, but in particular, if anybody's aware of any of the descendants of these World War I veterans, we want to send them a special invitation to come, because we're going to try and really honor them. So I've got a list that I'm going to hand out. If everybody look at it, if anybody knows any of their descendants or kinfolk or whatever, if they could get their address and names to us, we would appreciate that.
How many people do we have dying from Houston County?
We had 12, either killed in action or died in service.
And they're on the monument in
In front of the courthouse.
In front of the courthouse up there, 12.
And there was over 400 that were drafted or served in World War I.
Okay, the update too, that Donald was confirmed at the Houston County Board as our county historian, or one of our county historians. That was
Here, here.
made legitimate, so. Gary gave me an address, phone number. Apparently, the Tennessee Ridge, not the Tennessee Ridge sign, the metal marker on Highway 13 that was torn down,
Right.
ended up in the Houston County TDOT, then went to Clarksville TDOT,
Went there and that.
and then it went to Nashville
It's
TDOT.
hung up somewhere in
We
there.
hope, we hope. So I will be checking on that. He's been working on that since April. So the
That can't
sign-
get no response from them. I don't know, they must have got lost in the shuffle, but that's a pretty good sized sign to get lost.
And it's the metal marker depicting what?
The information is still intact, it's all. But
Okay.
the post is holding it up is what got busted.
So they have the post and the marker as well?
Well, they're supposed to put a new marker and new bottom stand on it and get it back to it, but I checked with that, transportation boy, just regular down here, and he said, it's out of his hands now after he carried it to Clarksville.
But it's the post and the marker they will be replacing, as your
They're
understanding?
supposed to replace the post and send it back.
Okay, we'll check on that then. The Tennessee Ridge sign, the best I can tell, has not been updated. The print looks good, but the map that's in the little area has faded out. At one point in time, we were going to get George Osbrooks to look at that and see if he could repaint it, but I don't remember who was in charge of contacting him, but I will look back and see if we can contact George to get that updated for us.
He called me about it, wanting to know if Bob had a picture of it, and I dropped the ball. He probably does, he's got a picture of everything, so I will look, but he just wanted, people that used to run Irish Imaging, there was a photographic place over here on the corner, one that did just the map, and, but they're no longer in business, but I'll see if I don't have a picture of it.
Now, that map is on both sides of the marker, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think,
So
I don't know.
will you be able to check with?
Yeah, I'll check with
Okay.
it and get back to George.
Thank you, Ms. Katie.
Miss Betty, when you talk to George, could you ask him about the railroad monument over in the pavilion, about if he was still gonna look at that?
Okay.
Okay, an update too, Mr. Kurt Fields, his U.S. Grant Program. There was a good representation from the Historical Society, a good program. I hear he has several different presentations that he has available. He did a good job, and I think was very excited to be here. Also in our, I guess it's our old business now, Miss Ann Hagler had mentioned an update on the Lucille Clements Memorial that they were working on. I have not talked to her, do not have an update or anything on that yet. The brick blading, or do you have an update on that? We have all the bricks. I guess Bonetta was kind of taking care of that to get those installed.
Was you
We've all
looking
been
on
paid
that
for
too?
the bricks,
She was
we've all
gonna-
been paid for.
She was gonna pick them up the 2 days before she left for Ireland, so.
Maybe
They're downstairs, they're down here, they're downstairs,
Okay.
downstairs, but I'm sure she'll take care of it.
And a company from Dixon was going to get those.
Somebody, she was gonna find, I believe, between Bonetta and the city, they found somebody to lay the bricks. And the last brick, the big one that the city's doing, that will be brought the day that it is laid.
The city is supposed to pour the foundation.
Okay.
Then the bricks are supposed to go on it, and you gotta get somebody bricklayer to do that, and that's like pulling teeth.
Okay.
I think they found somebody, she said.
Well, we found somebody, and then they'll be gone.
Okay, our archives representative is not available tonight, so we'll defer that until the next time. I wanted to remind you too, membership is $10 a year or $50 for a lifetime. If you would like to sign up for that, you'll get the email or the notes from the previous meeting. So without further ado, we have Miss Pam Lowery as our speaker tonight, recommended by Dan Osbrooks as our speaker, and I'll turn that over to you, Pam.
I don't know if I need the microphone. I haven't breathed in a while, but I used to could be heard pretty well. As Deborah said, I'm Pamela Coleman Lowery, and I'm a lifelong resident of Houston County. Can you hear me? Okay. have deep roots in Houston County. I am the oldest child of Connie Nance Coleman Gephardt, and my father was Roy Coleman. Don't need it. Okay. And I'm married to Donnie Lowery, sitting here on the front row. Many of you know Donnie. Some of you went to school with Donnie. I graduated from Houston County High School in 1972, and I graduated from Austin Peay State University in 1983. I have a BBA in accounting and general business. I'm a certified public accountant in the state of Tennessee. I make sure to keep my CPA certificate current because I don't want to take that test again. However, I have inactivated my permit to practice. Tennessee is on a 2-tier system, and you can practice, but you've got to satisfy requirements for permit. I inactivated it because I don't intend to work again, at least not in paid employment. My work now is purely on a voluntary basis, and most of that voluntary basis includes being a grandmother. Donnie and I have one son, Michael, and we have 2 granddaughters, Reagan, 11, and Riley, 8. And in fact, I just took them back home on Sunday after having them for 3 weeks. I had a very long federal career, 41 years and 2 days. 40 years of that in 2 days at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. The other year was with Tennessee Valley Authority, a year to the day, because to transfer between federal agencies you need at a minimum of 1 year. I got down to TVA at Campbell City because I thought, you know, I want to be closer to home. I'm young. I've got a lot of years to work, and 8.5 miles is sure a whole lot closer than 40 miles one way. But when I got to Campbell City, to TVA, it was different from what I was accustomed to. And I cut my teeth at Fort Campbell, going out there at age 18, and I wanted to go back home to Fort Campbell. So I called Fort Campbell about 2 weeks before I went back, and I said, I want to come back. And at that time, I was a clerk stenographer with, which was a field that there were very few. And they said, we've got a job for you, but you'll have to wait to transfer so that you don't have a break in service, and that's what I did. Now, I retired out of the civil service retirement system, which is the old retirement system. And under that retirement system, I could apply 14 months of unused sick leave. That's what I had accrued. So I actually went into retirement with 42 years and 2 months of creditable service. Like I said, I haven't briefed since I retired, which now has been 5 years, effective the 2nd of June. I can't believe it. Time has flown. I did a lot of briefing before I retired. And I haven't forgotten the 3-part Army procedure when you go to brief. The first part was tell them what you're going to tell them. Second part, tell them. And then third, tell them what you told them. So with that, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. First of all, I didn't know what to address here this evening. Dan and I were talking up at a breakfast, which, by the way, the church did make enough to send the kids to church camp. So thank you for your support. But anyway, when I was called, I said, you know, what will I talk about? Well, you know, just whatever you want to. That's always difficult for me. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to get a starting position. Can you hear me, Cooper? Okay. And so what I'm going to tell you about tonight is, first of all, the city of Fort Campbell. Then the units, famous units at Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell's deployment and training capabilities, their key facilities, and lastly, my career at Fort Campbell. So now for the telling. When I say Fort Campbell is a city, I truly mean that. Fort Campbell supports over 237,000 people. Constructed as Camp Campbell in 1942, much of those temporary buildings that were supposed to last short term are still out there. And in fact, I was still working in one of the admin World War II buildings when I retired. That 237,000 people sounds like a whole lot, but it's not when you begin to dissect who Fort Campbell supports. For example, the active duty military at Fort Campbell was probably a little over 26,000 in the division alone, division and garrison, and then you've got your special operations units. So somewhere probably around the 29,000 mark is the population of active duty military, and of course they have spouses and they have children. And so family members that are attached to that active duty military, about 40,000 family members, and again, I'm talking primarily the 101st, the Screaming Eagles. Another big population that Fort Campbell supports are military retirees. A lot of people choose to retire in the Clarksville, Hopkinsville area because this truly is a low cost of living area. And then some of the other things that attract the military when they retire are hunting and fishing. They think this is a paradise. Of course, if you're stationed at White Sands Missile Range or someplace like that, you would think it's a hunting and fishing paradise too. Those military retirees number in excess of 65,000, and they too have got a retiree family with them that approaches 95,000. Fort Campbell has over 4,400 family housing units, and they have barracks. So about 34% of the active duty military and their families reside on post. For 23,000 people who live on post in that city of Fort Campbell. Fort Campbell has got a major economic disbursement impact upon the local community. Now my figures are from 2016. 2017 should have been published, but I didn't have access to it. So excuse me for that. But in 2016, the economic disbursement from things affiliated with Fort Campbell was in excess of $4.75 billion, and that is with a B, billion. When you talk about the retired pay and the active duty military pay and the amount of contracts that are affiliated with Fort Campbell and the housing and just everything, $4.75 billion. In fact, in 2016, it was reported that Fort Campbell was the #1 employer in Kentucky and the #2 in Tennessee. Now, I don't know who's bigger in Tennessee than Fort Campbell when you figure in all of the military that are working out there and all of the civilians, but that's what it says. And I know that Clarksville is about to get an LG plant and a tire manufacturing plant. Will establish a presence in Montgomery County, but I dare say they won't in any way negatively impact the significance that Fort Campbell has on the local community. Now, we'll talk about the units at Fort Campbell. Most well known is the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles. And they're really an elite unit. I'm a little bit biased, having served for them for 41 years, or 40 years. The Screaming Eagles, if you please, they have an unmatched expeditionary air assault capability to conduct forcible entry into an area of operation. If you have never seen an air assault demonstration, I highly recommend that you try to do that the next time the one is available. They normally do the air assault demonstrations in conjunction with Week of the Eagles or with the 4th of July, sometimes other special events. But it is so impressive because you could be standing there outside and you don't see or hear anything. And all of a sudden a little black dot, or maybe a bunch of little black dots, will appear in the sky. And as they get closer, you'll see those black dots begin to take shape, and the shape is the helicopter. And they can zoom right on in very, very quickly. And as they're zooming, you'll see ropes hanging down from the helicopters, and swinging on those ropes will be soldiers about ready to repel. They'll drop smoke in the demonstration, and the smoke goes up, the helicopters go down. Those soldiers who are swinging on the ropes, not all the way to the bottom, when the smoke dissipates, you've got an entire war scenario on the ground. Those soldiers, at the time that the ropes hit the ground, not the helicopter, but the ropes hit the ground, rappel on down, and they're there to take out of the back end of the helicopters jeeps or guns or other soldiers or what have you. When that smoke is gone and the helicopters have lifted off, the field is just covered with soldiers and what they need to fight and win. Now, the 101st is known as a rapid deployment force. With 18 hours of notice, they can be up and out of Fort Campbell. The Fort Campbell soldiers are very actively involved in a constant state of deployment. It is an open door for them. You're always seeing and hearing on the news where this unit or that unit is deploying, if not the whole division. And sometimes the headquarters group deploys. The way that the Army is set up now is different from the yesteryear. Yesteryear, an entire division moved out. But you know how a computer now is like a plug and play and it's color coded and what have you? Well, the Army pattern now is that the pieces can be separated, such as an infantry brigade can be plugged out of Fort Campbell and go into combat with Fort Drum. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's a plug and play environment. So, the Fort Campbell, very active in the fight on the global war on terrorism. And one of the credits that you may remember was that in July 2003, the 101st is the unit who in Mosul, Iraq, went in and got Saddam Hussein's two sons. And I'll probably say their names wrong, but they were Qusay and Uday Hussein, and they were horrible. They were butchers. They were really horrible people. Then the second unit I wanted to talk about is the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment and Airborne Unit, the Night Stalkers. They are some of the world's greatest pilots, special operations, and they reside at Fort Campbell, and they include airborne soldiers, rangers, and Green Berets. And one of the most recent things that they did, a success, but there was a catastrophe, was the 160th SOAR, Special Operations Aviation Regiment, is the unit that flew the helicopters for SEAL Team 6. Remember that? When they went to Bin Laden's headquarters where he was in Pakistan. And so they are world famous, and they are some of the world's greatest pilots. And then the 5th Special Forces Group, the Legion. They have the ability to deploy in small teams to operate independently, sometimes for long periods of time, covert operations, and they can conduct their mission in very austere environments. They support Special Operations in support of the Special Operations Command. They support geographic combatant commanders, American ambassadors, and other governmental agencies, and they have been active in recent years in Syria. Okay, now some of the deployment capabilities of Fort Campbell, and I'm sorry, those are just the most notable, the most well-known units at Fort Campbell. There are all kinds of other pieces at Fort Campbell. For example, did you know that Fort Campbell had an Air Force group there? You did. Do you have affiliation with Fort Campbell? They have an Air Force group because one of the biggest deployment capabilities of Fort Campbell is the Campbell Army Airfield. And so they conduct the weather operations to say when you can land or when you can take off or storms coming in or what have you. It requires the services of this Air Force group. The Campbell Army Airfield is one of the Army's largest continental United States airfields. It has a runway, the main runway. There's more than one runway. in excess of 11,800 feet, and that's it. It is an alternate landing site for the space shuttle. In fact, it landed at Fort Campbell one time, and we all got to go out and look at it, so that was pretty good. Because of the Campbell Army Airfield capabilities, they can airlift soldiers right off of that airfield and set them down in a theater where they're needed. Fort Campbell also has rail capabilities. Fort Campbell owns a choo-choo. We used to joke about that. There are 17 miles of track on post and 18 miles off post. And they also have a rail operations facility that can process and load for deployment 240 rail cars in a 24-hour period. And that is pretty impressive. Get ready and go. Now, they usually use the rail capabilities for such things as deploying equipment to the point of debarkation, as opposed to barge operations, a third capability. Due to the closeness of the Cumberland River, they can take equipment down the river for training purposes. For example, the Joint Readiness Training Center that's at Fort Polk, Louisiana. They go down and play war games, and I've been a part of that. I was, as senior management, I was selected to go down and be a part of the Muddy Boots program. That's the name of it. You know, in the military, everything has got a name. And so I actually went in the box, is what it's called, out playing in the war scenarios. They hire civilians for the roles of civilians on the battlefield, and you go into these mock villages, and you know, it's real time. Provides first class training. And so anyway, these barge operations are probably the least expensive mode of transportation, and they can transport the rolling stock that they need, loaded containers, and even aircraft. Now, Fort Campbell is a huge area. I told you it was the city of Fort Campbell, but I didn't mention the size. Fort Campbell exceeds 105,000 acres. If you look on a map to see Fort Campbell, it looks like a Chinook helicopter. That's the helicopter that comes over with the two blades. Looks like a Chinook helicopter, and Fort Campbell actually resides in 4 counties, 2 in Tennessee, 2 in Kentucky. The 2 in Kentucky are Trigg and Christian County. Christian County, not so much, just a small piece. But Tennessee, Stewart and Montgomery County, pretty good slice of Stewart County, and that affords a lot of training areas. And so the next thing I want to mention about their capabilities is because of the size of Fort Campbell and it being one of the largest in the world, the soldiers get to stay at home mostly to do their training, and that can't be said about all installations. A great many have to go off post somewhere. You've got added costs when you've got to send people somewhere to train. But at Fort Campbell, they can go into what we call the back 40, which affords in excess of 64,000 acres of maneuver land and almost 27,000 acres of impact area. So they can fire their guns and practice right there. Fort Campbell also has 54 training areas separated out, so you can have different units in different training areas, just like you have them assigned to different parts of a country. And they have 111 ranges. The city of Fort Campbell has got some key facilities as well. In addition to the 44 housing units that I mentioned, Fort Campbell has got the second largest AFES mall in the continental United States. And AFES stands for the Army and Air Force Exchange Service, the OPX, commissary PX. So it's the second largest AFES mall in commerce in the continental United States. Fort Campbell boasts 7 child development centers, and they are good ones, oftentimes having a waiting list. They have 3 school-age centers. Fort Campbell has got a complete school system for kindergarten through 12th grade, for the students residing on post, and it approximates 5,000 students. It's a pretty good-sized school system. They have the Blanchfield Army Community Hospital, and any recreation facilities, I better caveat that, I'd say most any recreation facilities that you would find in Clarksville or Hopkinsville, the surrounding community, you're going to find on Fort Campbell. For example, fitness centers are top priority because they're always in a state of readiness, keeping physically fit in order that they can be productive when they go into battle. Fort Campbell has a golf course, 18-hole golf course, bowling alley with that psychedelic type lighting. I don't know what they call it. It was the thing when I retired. They have arts and crafts centers. You can just do anything there, pottery or picture framing or reupholstering furniture or just this, that, and the other. Classes offered continuously, different classes. They have auto shops where you can go and learn how to work on your vehicles. They also have auto shop that they hire. For example, my car broke down one time, and they came and got my car and took it over and fixed it for me. And the prices are very competitive. As a civilian, a Department of the Army civilian, I could use any of the facilities on post, with the exception of the PX or the commissary. I could only use those things when I was on travel orders in another place. Then I could go, of course, to the PX and get whatever I needed. Fort Campbell has restaurants. They have Burger King, KFC, Taco Bell, and in that AFES, large AFES, there are also a number of chain restaurants, all in under the roof of the AFES on the outer side of it. And has some other restaurants that used to be called mess halls. As a civilian, I could eat at the mess hall. But those mess halls are pretty awesome now. They're called DFACs, or dining facilities, for a very, very modest cost. You can go in there and eat till you couldn't walk out. And it's really good food. So that's what I was going to tell you about the city of Fort Campbell, the deployment capabilities, and what have you. Now I'd like to tell you just a little bit about my career. Both my grandmother, Mary Elizabeth Winters, everyone called her Libby, and my step-grandfather, who was James William Winters, or Bill Winters, retired out of Fort Campbell. And my grandmother was still working when I was in high school, and in fact worked for some time after I started working. And she'd heard that Fort Campbell was going to be hiring again, so she brought me a little card to mail in. Back then, everyone had to take a civil service test and pass it. They don't do that anymore. So I mailed this card in, and I got it back that I would report to the Clarksville Post Office there on Madison Street, had to carry my own typewriter, and take the civil service exam. And I did that in February of my senior year. And they called me for an interview the 1st of May, my senior year. I graduated the 19th of May, and I went to work at Fort Campbell the 1st day of June. So I went out there at the ripe old age of 18. Now, only 2 months before, Fort Campbell was a ghost town because the division didn't redeploy, didn't come back home to Fort Campbell until April of 1972. And that's why they were hiring, because they had to hire up civilians to support the returning military. My first job at Fort Campbell was as a GS2 clerk typist. And it didn't matter that it was the lowest job, GS2, on the scale of a GS2 to GS15. I was tickled to death to have it. I hired in at $2.48 an hour when the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. And I was making minimum wage because as a junior in high school, I had started working and was still working at the A&W over here in Erin at $1.60 an hour. And that A&W was not a chain restaurant. It stood for Archie Brooks and Wesley Fluke, the home of the square hamburger. And I continued to work there even after going to work at Fort Campbell because I could work Friday evenings when I came in and Saturday and Sunday. But anyway, tickled to death, lowest person on the totem pole. And there were some other GS2s too. And then I started to Austin P in 1974. I was still working at Fort Campbell. I had to keep working. I needed my job, I needed my money, so I went at night. I wanted to become an accountant, and I did. My degree opened doors in the professional field of accounting. Funny what a piece of paper will do. But you know, in so many fields, it doesn't matter what you've got up here, you've got to have a piece of paper in your hand to even get through the door, and that was the case. The professional field required a bachelor's degree just to be a GS5, and that's what I walked into. In addition to my civilian education, I have completed so many Army programs, detailed management, upper management, so many I couldn't list them. I've completed some pretty significant programs. For example, I'm a graduate of the Army Management Staff College, which is something that senior officers go to. I graduated from Installation Leadership, the Installation Management course, which is a course that they send the garrison commanders to, so they learn how to operate the installation. And I'm a graduate of the Advanced Resource Management program at Syracuse University. I held positions as an internal auditor. That was my first professional accounting job. Then as a staff accountant, an operating accountant, I was the senior budget analyst for the installation. I became the budget officer. I became the director of resource management, and finally I retired as the mission support element, G8. Now G8 is a military term that just means it stands for the money. It's the controller. The resource manager a long time ago used to be called the controller. I was known as the money lady at Fort Campbell. Ordinarily, the director of resource management is held by a military person. And for a division, which is commanded by a 2-star general, the controller is normally an 06 requirement, which is a full colonel requirement. But you know, full colonels are kind of scarce sometimes. And so most often it was filled by an 05, a lieutenant colonel. But with the constant state of deployment at Fort Campbell, you know, that revolving door, I was repeatedly temporarily promoted from the budget officer into the DREM position. It was a great promotion. And then the military would come back and I'd step back down. The funny part was, even when I was temporarily promoted, I never left the budget officer position. I just had to do both. In truth, as a budget officer, you are the primary advisor to the Director of Resource Management. So, someone woke up. The Army woke up and they recognized that with this constant state of deployment that we have found ourselves in, that there needed to be a separation of the deployable side from the non-deployable side. Non-deployable being the garrison, being civilians, and contractors, lots of contractors now. The deployable side being green suiters who are going to unplug and go. As a result, there was a new command which stood up called the Installation Management Command. And the resource management would be handled entirely by civilians, and I was the new director. So I got that promotion on a permanent basis. A few years later, the mission side decided to do the same thing. They stood up a permanent party organization called the Mission Support Element G8. And the command group asked me to come back over to the division side to help stand that up and to oversee that operation. And that's what I did. And that's where I was when I retired. Because of the deployment constantly of the military person, I was the permanent party. And as such, I was the commander's ears and eyes to keep him informed, and I carried his delegation of funding authority. I had the approval. The military officer did not. And that wasn't always a palatable thing for an incoming Director of Resource Management. I had a wonderful career at Fort Campbell, loved it. The reason why I retired when I did is because I'm an accountant and I put pencil to paper, and you don't just plan your retirement today and go tomorrow. I've been watching it for years. And I had approached the point that pretty soon I was going to be break-even. And if I went very much further, I was going to be paying Fort Campbell to work. And that's just not smart. I can tell you that one of the ladies that worked for me is still out there working, and she has 51 years of service. And she definitely is paying the government to work. There's also a gentleman over in the G3 area, which is the plans and operations area, who has more time than she does. I don't see it. And since I did cost-benefit analysis for so many years and dealt in the money, I just couldn't do it. You know, I love Fort Campbell. There have been days when I wished I had stayed, not so much in recent years, but at first, why did I retire? But I'm quite happy now, and it was the right thing to do. Now, I had a wonderful career, like I said, and I had the opportunity to have several firsts at Fort Campbell. Most notably, I'm known as the woman that broke the glass ceiling at Fort Campbell. I became the first GS-15 female, and to date, there's not another one out there. So, loved Fort Campbell. There were 21 major generals in command of the 101st from the time that I started working there in 1972 until I retired in 2013. Generally, they come and they stay about 2 years. Not always the case. Now, that's the major generals. In times of deployment, a 1-star would come in and act temporarily until the 2 stars got back. Some of those generals were real characters. I was talking to Dan at this breakfast that we attended, and it just so happened that Dana knew a couple of them that I had worked with. And I want to tell you something about her. The first one is General Richard Cody, Dick Cody, and he's at the top in the center. He is famous for a couple of reasons. He is the man that fired the first shot in Desert Storm. And he also, when he went to retire, he retired out of the position as the 31st Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. He made 4 stars, as so many who came from Fort Campbell did. Now, he was a mess. He would come into a briefing, his aide, you know, every general has got an aide, a captain who runs along before him and sets it up for the general. And the aide would come in and he'd plop down a Coca-Cola, full strength, and he'd plop down a bag of M&Ms, although one time he put down a can of nuts. And General Cody, and he'd plop down something for General Cody to spit in. Yeah. He chewed tobacco, but he did it on the sly. Because Miss Vicky, his wife, had better not catch him chewing tobacco. So if she came into the headquarters, one of his people would let him know she was there so that he could ditch the tobacco. But anyway, he would talk. I would have about an hour to brief him. And he'd talk a good 30 minutes of it, just rambling, just different stories. He had different vignettes for different things, totally unrelated. You had to love him. He was a darling, and we got the job done. Probably my most favorite, no, not probably, my most favorite general to serve was General David Petraeus, and he's at the top, closest to me. Now, the commanding generals were normally aviators, or they were infantry officers. They were not budgeteers. It didn't come easy for them. And even though, you know, they did what I recommended and what have you, there was 2 times a year when the generals would have to get on the video teleconference to their commanders at the major command, which was Forces Command, and sometimes to the Corps Commander. Corps Commander is a 3-star, a major command, Forces Command was a 4-star. So my 2-face general would have to get his face time with his boss. And so you go in and you have a script and you study them up and what have you, so that they can sit in front of the VTC and talk to their bosses who probably didn't know just a whole lot more about detailed budget, but you had to sound good. And we were very successful a lot of times in getting money when my general would brief his boss. So anyway, they were not always budgeteers and some not so easy to work with, but that wasn't the case of David Petraeus. He's as smart as a whip. He understood anything that you put in front of him, and he understood it quickly. He too made a 4-star, and when I say he's smart, he has a MPA and a PhD from Princeton. He became, as you know, the commander of the Central Command and the commander of the International Security Assistance Force. He later became the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. I think he was the 4th director of the CIA. And then we had the Petraeus scandal, which I hate that as we talked. I think he has been wonderful president material. I love General Petraeus. After he went to become the commander of the International Security Assistance Force, he sent me a little thank you note with one of his coins in there. And unlike the other Army coins that a commander gets, this one has his name on it. The other, the commanders of the installations can't put their names on them because what they don't hand out when the new general comes in, they're available for the new general. What this coin does right here is it ensures that I can drink all I want to drink and never pay a dime. Now that sounds ugly, and I wouldn't do that. Scotty and Wanda, don't y'all go back to church and be telling them that. But when you work for the military, there's a lot of pride in the coins that you get for jobs well done. Now these are controlled, so not everyone gets a coin, and it's a prohibition for contractors to be given a coin. But what happens is if you walk in the officers club or one of the bars and there are other military members there or civilians, such as myself, you can get coins. And if you don't have a coin, you're going to pay for everyone's drink. Now, if there are multiple coins, if they're the same rank, and, no rank. But then, if there are different ranks, then the low rank, if you can imagine a 2-star general being low rank, guess who gets to buy the drink? The 2-star general's coin. This one we ensure I never have to buy a drink. Now, like I said, not everyone was easy to, or had an easy time understanding the budget. At one point, the division was deployed, and the garrison commander, who was a colonel, special operations also, as was General Cody initially, I was trying to work with him on the budget. And he was a full colonel. Garrison commander's always full colonel. And I'm trying to brief him up, and he's not getting it. And he's not pretending to get it, and he doesn't want to get it. And all of a sudden he says, just as serious as he can be, remember this is a special operations guy, he said, just stick me in the eye with a pencil. Not a grin or anything on him, he truly meant it. He retired as an 06, a full colonel, and he went on to become a male model. And probably made more money than the others who became 4-stars. But anyway, well, I've been retired for 5 years. Love it. Good career. I was very fortunate. But to recap what we've talked about tonight, we talked about Fort Campbell as a city, and I told you about the size of Fort Campbell and all of its accommodations. We've talked about 3 of the elite units at Fort Campbell. We talked about deployment and training capabilities, such as the Campbell Army Airfield and the choo-choo train. Talked about the key facilities at Fort Campbell, like the hospital and the dependent school system. And then an overview of my career. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. I've been gone for 5 years, and I want to thank you again for having me. So, as George would say on McCoy's, I've had my say. Do you have questions? Thank you.
So much.
Deborah, now you know why I said it was gonna be, what was the word you used? Compelling.
Compelling, yes.
I told you it was gonna
If
be
you have any
compelling.
questions for her with the pictures or anything, I'm sure she'll be glad to tell you about those.
They're just at different stages of my career.
I wanted to let you know that we still have some books available from the Historical Society if you're doing any research. We do have the Danville reunion in October. I think there's a Danville book. I don't know whether I have it with me or not, but if you want to read up on that. Next month will be August, same time, same place here, August 14th, 7 o'clock. Dan will interview Charles Sweet, who will be another interesting military.
Charlie called me and said, "What's this interview stuff?" And I said, "Well, Charlie," they said, "Don't be paying attention." And I said, "That's just trying to, so you'll finish on time."
I'm sure he'll have some stories to tell as well as Pam, and we invite you all to attend for that. If there's anything else, otherwise we'll adjourn and see you next month.